Salutations, fellow nerds. I'm Rick Y, and today is February 21st, 2025. It was very clear early on who Trump found strength in when it came to world leaders. China, North Korea, and Russia seemed to really catch his eye, but the relationship between he and Putin was blindingly obvious. However, his recent statements regarding the war in Ukraine have made it completely clear that he is 100% capitulating to the Kremlin in what could be seen as treasonous were we actually in open war with Russia. To my surprise, Republicans across the country are actually starting to speak out against his recent Russian ridiculousness. So if you enjoy news, history, or humorous American hogwash, consider dropping a blue heart in the comments, or even better, liking and subscribing if you dig the content. This week, Trump had shared what very small amount of intellect he had in regards to the war in Ukraine as he posted actual Kremlin talking points from his platform. I'm going to try and sift through this bullshit because we cannot let this slide. It is dangerous, and it is a complete mischaracterization to the reality of what has occurred in Europe over the past few years. But the strategy isn't new. In fact, it is a widely used Russian misinformation tactic. You see, the benefit is if the masses are confused. You see, they don't need you to believe one side or another. As long as you're unsure or so confused that you stop giving a damn, they get what they need out of it. Now, regardless of what we all saw and heard with our own eyes and ears, this Orwellian tactic of making you believe what is contrary to reality has begun with Donald Trump when he posted this. Quote, "Think of it. A modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelensky, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization? In that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us. We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections, Zelensky better move fast, or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something I'll admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered and millions have unnecessarily died." And so it continues. He's so fucking stupid. Claim 1. Volodymyr Zelensky talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion. The reality is the United States has allocated approximately $175 billion in aid to Ukraine since 2022. Not only is this a significantly lower number than Trump's claim, it's also done so by giving Ukraine old tech we don't need nor use and spending the money internally, which goes to American businesses. This is such a vast misunderstanding of how this works, it's almost unbelievable. How would Ukraine benefit from us just giving them money? That isn't what's happening. And if that's what you assumed, maybe you need to change your information intake. Claim 2. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe. While the EU has been able to provide somewhere in the range of $140 billion in aid to Ukraine, which is, in fact, lower than the bloated defense apparatus that we have, it's nowhere near a deficit close to what Trump is declaring. It's horseshit. Claim 3. Zelensky admits that half of the money that we sent him is missing. President Zelensky has expressed concerns that Ukraine has not received the full amount of U.S. allocated aid, suggesting that less than half has reached the country. That does not mean that the money is missing. Large portions of money is utilized by us in war-related activities. It doesn't all include direct monetary funds getting transferred to Ukraine. Military and combat logistics can be complicated, and if you're confused about any of it, Hit me up in the comments and I'll try my best to answer. Claim 4. He refuses to have elections. Okay, this is true. This is due to the fact that there is currently an invading force in his country ripping his civilians to shreds over their leader's imperialistic ambitions. This is a wartime measure that occurs. Martial law is currently in effect in Ukraine because fucking duh. Claim 5. We are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia. Here's the part that really chaps my ass. Recent reports indicate that the U.S. has engaged in talks with Russia regarding the Ukrainian conflict. However, these discussions have notably excluded Ukrainian representatives. This is problematic given that Ukraine, not Russia, had been invaded by Russia. Not including them is about as one-sided as the approach in Palestine. Trump and our State Department are only responsible for the United States. This may come as a big shock to you, but negotiating on behalf of other sovereign countries without their knowledge, consent, or even involvement makes those negotiations illegitimate. There's no reason at all as to why Trump thinks the United States is even in the position to say that. Europe is going to continue supporting Ukraine in their resistance, whether Trump chooses to stop or not. This war doesn't end when Trump and Putin say so. Claim 6. Zelensky is very low in Ukrainian polls. Again, wrong. Mega wrong. So much so that current polling indicates that while Zelensky's support has slightly dropped to just under 60% approval, Trump's is currently at 45% and dropping, and he hasn't been in office 2 months. By this metric, Trump should be removed from office and done so by a different country's leader. See how stupid that sounds? It's asinine. Claim 7. Millions have unnecessarily died. Dude, what is going on with the inability to report numbers accordingly? The UN estimates that 30,000 Ukrainians have died. Y'all are free to cross-reference every single one of my claims. In fact, I dare you. Also, I want to go over some other claims that Trump has made. Trump claimed that Zelensky is a dictator. For those of you who may not be up to speed on the past elections in the region, let's take a look at the graph, shall we? While Ukraine may not have had perfect leaders 100% of the time, it appears as though there is a rather democratic turnover rate, given they all seem to have been nominated through the electoral process. Oddly enough, with a realistic approval rating of 57%, Zelensky has been democratically elected. Yet, as you can see, Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus and Vladimir Putin of Russia seem to have held on to power for almost 3 decades each, while both maintaining approval ratings of almost 90%. Now, ain't that just the damnedest thing? It's almost like it's too good to be true. You see, what Trump is doing is that he's trying to twist his supporters the way he twisted them from January 6th. Ukraine never invaded Russia. Russia illegally invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. Anyone starting with this should be immediately discredited. There's no longer any reason for you to humor anybody who is so easily manipulated that they can't actually form a single thought from information that their own eyes and ears can provide. This is a Kremlin talking point. Another Kremlin talking point was that Biden was trying to get Ukraine into NATO. On the contrary, the only reason NATO members were hesitant to allow Ukraine membership was to avoid Russian hostility. That is until Russia became hostile. To this day, they're not allowed entry until the war with Russia has ended due to NATO's Article 5, which dictates that any member nation engaged in war with Russia means like all states are at war with Russia. So let's kind of go over the reality for a moment. We haven't been at war with them. No Americans have been killed or wounded, and their military has been ripped to shreds while their economy has been forced against the ropes. If anything, the strategic approach by the Biden administration and other European ally states has allowed us to keep our troops out of harm's way while deteriorating the military strength of one of our largest geopolitical adversaries in the biggest fight in Europe since World War II. This is and has been one of, if not the single most massive strategic victory of Western nations since Germany's signing of unconditional surrender in May of 1945. I understand how difficult it is to fathom the gains that we as Americans and NATO have made long term in this struggle, and how important Ukraine's victory will be for us as a nation on the global stage. If we pull out and they succeed, we won't have any say in the terms that will be negotiated, nor will we deserve to. But if Ukraine fails and Russia takes what it wants as Putin tries to steamroll his way into a modern Soviet bloc, only then will we as Americans have anything to take credit for. Anyways, if you have hung in there with me this far, I appreciate it. Make sure to drop a blue heart in the comments section and get loud for your support of Ukraine. Call your reps if you can and tell them you're pissed. Y'all come back now. You hear? Slava Ukraini.